Daily to discuss the news that you may have missed while scanning the newspaper headlines this morning. Anthony Grant.
Well, welcome.
Welcome to you.
Good morning.
Good morning on this very fine day.
Yes.
It became fine.
Yes. The weather can change fast in the region.
It can.
As it can anywhere. But, this is a big momentous day because of the 70th anniversary of D-Day, and world leaders, of course, are gathering along with veterans in France. And a lot of the headlines in the British papers, for example, are reflecting this momentous anniversary, such as the Express, which talks about how D-Day veterans pilgrimage of honor 70 years on and salute to the fallen. Picture of Prince Charles there, who was one of the first to arrive for some of these commemorative events.
Right. 70 years on. Wow. And that generation is slowly...
There are still, there are still people, veterans that fought, that, fewer and fewer. But, of course, their tales and the details that emerge from those are, part of historical, record, really.
Indeed.
So,
well, to add a personal touch to D-Day's 70th anniversary, we're now joined via Skype by your father, Anthony, Dr. Alan Leckman from Palm Springs, California. Dr. Leckman, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
We're interested, of course, in hearing some of your own family history regarding the famous landings on D-Day 70 years ago. Your father was one such soldier.
Yes, he was. Indeed, he was. He landed at Utah Beach, and I believe he was in what he called the third wave. And he told me many times that if he had been in the first wave, or if he had landed at Omaha Beach, I would probably be an only child, because it was very, very rough there, as you can imagine.
And you yourself went back to see, of course, where they landed, and what was your perception as the second generation?
Well, went back actually with both of my sons at the 60th anniversary. And we really spent some time on the beaches, and you become amazed at what they accomplished, because they were basically targets. And it was amazing to see the vast expanse of beach that these men had to traverse and actually establish a beachhead. It's almost incomprehensible when you look at it that way.
And when you were growing up, was this were stories told from that from D-Day, or was it something that really wasn't spoken about, something that perhaps was very tragic and traumatic, and thus wasn't really on the open?
Yes, many men were like my father. They didn't like to discuss the actual events because some, as you can well imagine, were horrific. And it was not something they wanted to talk about, because then it would force them to remember. And they just wanted to remember other things, didn't want to talk about the actual events that occurred. But they did talk about a few things, a few battles that they won, some that they lost. My father proceeded on for a month to go to St. Lo, where there was a major battle fought, and it was a huge strategic win for the United States at that point. And that's where my father was wounded.
A question now from your son here in studio, Anthony.
Do you have any of Hi's relics that he maybe gave to you after, just to hand down to you to keep for posterity?
Sure, if I can be allowed to change the camera around, I can show you.
Well,
if you look up here, you can see a helmet. And if you look closely, you can see some of the dents and the tearing and the camouflage netting.
Indeed.
And his Purple Heart.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
And it's actually in there, but it's a little hard to open it up with one hand. But yes, and then if you go back a little bit, I have
a whole corner dedicated.
And I thought when I first saw this poster, I might actually see my father in it, but of course I don't. But this is exactly what it looked like when they landed at Utah.
Wow. Well, Dr. Leckman, thank you for joining us from Palm Springs, California. 70 years, of course, since D-Day, and thank you for sharing with us Anthony Grant here in studio.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
Wow, Anthony, what a family history.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to go quickly to the next headline.
Okay, very quickly. The Australian coalition rules out Occupy to describe Israeli East Jerusalem settlements.
Right.
We've talked about that. So moving on to something a little bit more, let's see, different note. The Daily Star in Beirut reports that Russia has praised the Syrian election as free and fair.
Oh, well,
I mean,
thank God for Russia.
On a lighter note, right? Because we all were so convinced of that. So.
And no one like Russia to make me even more convinced.
Exactly.
Okay.
But they're saying, listen, maybe it was a difficult election given the events on the ground, but the part that was actually electoral related was unmarred by how shall I put it, by legitimacy. They're saying it was legitimately done, the part that was monitored by them.
All right.
And others,
well, we won't argue with that right now.
Not right now. Later we will.
Maybe.
Al Arabiya has sort of a side note to the election in Egypt, saying Adli Mansour is the first Egyptian president to enjoy a safe exit.
Meaning he's not in a cage.
Not in a cage, and he was apparently the first modern Egyptian head of state to leave office alive or without engendering an uprising.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of an accomplishment.
And he stepped, he stepped down. He also is accepting the election results.
Yeah.
That helps.
So it does help, yeah. So a little bit of calm in the Egyptian storm.
For now.
Creating ruffling other feathers, of course, is Nigel Farage, if I'm pronouncing it right, from the United Kingdom Independent Party.
UKIP.
UKIP,
Yeah.
who says that in this editorial piece in the Telegraph that Greece has been sacrificed on the altar of the failed Euro experiment. Oh. He says that an IMF report is proving that British taxpayers' money was used to back a coup, as he describes it, against the Greek people.
Wow.
Strong language.
Strong language against the EU.
Very much so.
Very much so. That was his campaign, and he did well in these European
He did. So
Parliament
he's
so he has an audience.
Going off on that same theme of against the EU, as we're seeing. Interesting story from Kenya. The Daily Nation, a big newspaper down there, reports that United Kingdom troops are going to be training with the Kenya Wildlife Service to fight elephant poaching.
Oh, good.
This is, of course, a huge issue in Kenya.
What a picture.
It's a horrible picture. 71 elephants have been killed in Kenya since the beginning of the year. And, of course, these are endangered species. And United Kingdom troops, they are going to be working on anti-ambush techniques with the Wildlife Service authorities in Kenya to help combat the poaching.
Wow. And
Daily Mail has reported that some poaching is being done by Al-Qaeda elements to fund terrorist activities, reportedly.
Wow.
It's just a messy situation. Ivory and illicit trade in that in China, of course, is still something that is very much something in play, unfortunately. Do we have time for some Hillary Clinton news?
I can't say no to Hillary Clinton.
I didn't think you could. The Washington Free Beacon reports that Hillary, according to them, to the New York Times, is set to back off. Apparently, some of Hillary's closest assistants had a meeting with the New York Times' Washington bureau saying that they're treating her too roughly and that because she's no longer a public figure, she shouldn't have as much close public scrutiny as an actual someone who's in office. Right. And the New York Times has no comment about this alleged meeting, which might tell you that it did probably actually take place.
Well,
possibly.
The meeting did include her close advisors and so forth. But she prefers people now.
She prefers people. I mean,
people.
She's fresh-faced. That's kind of the image that I think she's going for right now.
New York Times is too, highbrow right now. We want to go for the People magazine.
Yeah, well, the New York Times. Who knows? It's a candidate a potential candidate that you could see them backing. I think,
right.
But they do ask a lot of hard questions.
Indeed.
They also have an article, the New York Times, about Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, and it's a very easy article. They talk about how he works out.
Right.
In New York. It's a very sort of a puff piece, which you wouldn't normally expect in a paper like the Times, but there you go.
Well, de Blasio is doing well so far. Anthony Grant, thank you. And Tal